A twist in the courtroom today in the Sean Diddy Combs trial. The jury reaching a partial verdict in the music mogul's federal sex trafficking and racketeering trial. The jurors sent a note to the judge saying they'd reached a verdict on 4 of the 5 counts, but were unable to agree on 1 charge. But jurors will continue deliberating tomorrow. So here is a breakdown of the charges he's facing. The jury hasn't reached a verdict yet on 1 count of racketeering conspiracy, but they have reached one on the other 4 charges. That includes 2 counts of sex trafficking by force, fraud or coercion, and 2 counts of transportation for purposes of prostitution. CBS News legal reporter Katrina Kaufman has been following this trial for the network throughout its ups and its downs. And here she is with the latest as the jury deliberations are set to pick up tomorrow.
The jury in Sean Combs' trial says they have reached a verdict on 4 of the counts, that is 2, 3, 4, and 5, but that they are unable to come to a consensus on count 1, and that there are jurors on both sides who are unpersuadable. The judge ultimately decided, after speaking with the parties, to have the jury continue deliberating. He read them an instruction from his original jury charge about their duty to deliberate. Now, when we got the note about this, Sean Combs was sitting. His lawyers were all huddled around him in the courtroom. Combs was very still, very somber through all of this. And it's hard to describe how ominous the atmosphere was. It had started raining outside, and there was thunder multiple times as we waited to see what was going to happen in there. But now we know that the jury has made a decision on most of the counts in this trial, but count 1 is the biggest and the most complicated. That is racketeering conspiracy. It carries the weight potentially of up to life in prison for Sean Combs. His family also filtered in as we were waiting into the courtroom. His mother was in there. His daughters came in. His sons. As he left the courtroom, he told them all that he loved them and he left for the day. Katrina Kaufman, CBS News, New York.
Joining me now, lawyer and legal analyst Eric Guster. Eric, thanks so much for being here. Okay, let's talk. The jury remains deadlocked on the most serious charge. Jurors are actually reportedly saying that there were unpersuadable opinions on both sides. So let's talk about what happens now. Do they continue to deliberate tomorrow morning, first thing?
Both sides, the defense and the prosecution, wanted them to continue to deliberate. Nobody wants to try a case twice. So they want them to come back and deliberate. However, the jurors said that there are people on both sides who will not move. So it could end up with a split verdict where they come up with 4 counts of guilty or not guilty and 1 where they're hung.
We always look at the clock and how long a jury's been deliberating. So they spent over 10 hours deliberating since Monday before submitting this partial decision. What do you make of that time frame? Is that fairly quick?
Jury decisions are very tough. I generally believe that a fast verdict is a guilty verdict in a criminal case. Racketeering is the most serious case because you have to prove that there was this big mass conspiracy where you had people doing different criminal things and criminal acts, which I'm not sure that the prosecution did a very good job of that. I expected them to bring in people who would say they blew up the car of the rapper and they did other things on his behalf, and they may not have brought all of that evidence that they needed to prove that point. But the other 4, they have a verdict, and it's going to be interesting to see what the judge does.
Okay, deliberations continue, but if, and I say if, the jury remains hung on the racketeering charge, could the judge consider a mistrial on that count or accept a partial verdict and proceed to sentencing on the 4 resolved counts?
The judge can do a partial verdict where he can receive the verdict for 4 counts, and if Sean Diddy Combs is found guilty of any of those, then proceed to sentencing, or give the prosecution the decision, say, hey, do you want to retry this case, or do you want him to be sentenced on the other 4 remaining counts? Because they would really reserve sentencing for whether or not the prosecution wants to retry the second case, which he would not get out on bond, perhaps, waiting on an appeal or sentencing on those.
And before we go, we have 2 days before court's out because of July 4th. So if you look at a time frame, do you consider the jury deliberating throughout the day tomorrow and possibly coming back Thursday? I know it's anyone's guess, but if you're thinking about a jury mindset, do they want to get out of there?
Jury mindset, coming on a holiday, these people want to go home. They want to barbecue some chicken, not think
yeah.
about this case. They've been in this case for weeks. They are ready to go home. And I expected a verdict before July 4th because these people want this case over with. They want it behind them so they can move on with their lives.
All right. Appreciate all of your context for this, and we'll follow back with you. Eric Guster, thank you.